Welcome to Probate Weekly. I'm Bill Gross, your host at Bill Gross Probate on social media. We're excited today to have a guy who, as an attorney, has handled I think over 2,000 probates. He told me from the great state of Texas. Taylor Willingham. Taylor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me on.
And I know I've come to meet you through the Scrivener service, and they've used you as one of their referred partners. So let's talk about probate. Is that the focus of your practice? Is that part of it? Tell me where that fits into your business.
Yeah, so I do estate planning, probate, and I own a title company too. So I do kind of that area of law. I used to do all of our probates. Now I handle a very few amount, but we have other attorneys in the office that handle most of them. I do more of the elder law estate planning practice right now, but like earlier this morning, I was doing a probate this morning, so I get into them every once in a while.
And estate planning, I think of that as avoiding probate, and probate is your estate plan didn't do what you wanted to do, or you didn't take the time to get your estate plan done. So they're obviously just two sides of the same coin.
Yes, yeah. So it's it all flows together in one thing.
How'd you end up in this area? Obviously, it's a pretty specialized area. You have a big practice, so you have some big pieces of it. But how did you end up in this specialty?
Well, in law school, I got there, and one of the things that kind of shocked me about law school was it seemed like all my professors were very unhappy people. So it was kind of a switch for me because in undergrad, my professors seemed like they enjoyed their jobs. And I got to law school, and it didn't seem that they were very happy, except for I got my one professor that did estates. He was the happiest guy I probably ever met in my life up to that point. And I thought, well, whatever he did in his practice, and he was an estate planning probate attorney, I want to do that. And because it, generally led to this idea that, you can be happy and enjoy what you do. And so he's the one that inspired me to go that direction. And then I met an attorney in town that I was working at that was an estate planning, probate, and a financial planning attorney. And he had me go get my master's in personal finance and work for him for about 2.5 years while I was in law school.
So I agree with you in that I also my father's an attorney. I was kind of bred to be an attorney. I was on the debate team in high school and college to prepare. I applied to law school, got accepted at law schools, including UT, by the way, and decided not to go because everybody who I met who was an attorney was miserable. Yeah. I mean, like almost suicidal miserable.
Yeah.
I didn't meet that one guy that was happy like you did. But as a real estate agent, same process in that the business has been, it's very hard to distinguish yourself and customers don't necessarily appreciate the service. But when I got into probate and became an expert, all of a sudden attorneys showed me more respect and appreciation. My customers for sure did. What do you think it is about the practice in probate specifically, or estate planning, again, related? What do you think it is about that you enjoy, but also leads to a sense of purpose for other people as well?
So in probate, the enjoyable part of doing it is people are always getting something. Where every other type of litigation, your client's losing. Like, you can be the best attorney in the world, but they're still going to lose out on the fact that they have to pay you fees. So in that area, it's one of the places that at the end, people are genuinely happy. They're grateful for kind of the help that you guide them through and do it. And so that experience is one of the big parts. And plus it's like an area that really people don't understand because you usually don't interact with it except for maybe once or twice in your life.
Right.
And so it's something where you can do a lot of education, which is one of the things I love to do is educate. And I'm sure that's a big part of your life. Podcasters are educators. They love to share information, and that's part of what I love to do is teach people.
So in this business, obviously part of any growth of business is doing a good job. People come back to you. What is it you do to educate, get the word out, make yourself available so people are aware of what you do, or more importantly, how you solve their problem? How do you make yourself available to that people will reach out to you or your firm?
So in probate, the biggest way people find probate attorneys is Google, because most people, they'll ask their friend, well, do you know somebody that does it? But people usually don't know people that do this type of law. So they go to Google, and Google ads are, of course, the king of still generating that business. another big way that I've written 5 books, and so people generally will find me through reading a book that I've written in the past, and so that's been one. My probate, it's kind of the probate book, estate planning book, but for 10 years I've been trying to write the book. It's about the history of estate planning and succession laws and different things, and so a lot of it comes from that, and then I do a lot of seminars to kind of educate people on different things, and people will find out in that situation. And the last is I own a title company, and of course, as real estate agents, you guys are the ones that generally have to explain to people, hey, you're gonna have to go through probate.
Right.
You don't just automatically get this home. We got to go through the process, and so agents are a big referral source for me.
And for those listening, I think what happens is too often, I had this happen to me where a client called me and said, hey, we can't close a refinance because there's 5 siblings and one's passed. When do they find this out? At the very close, when the lender says, oh, there's one last condition, the title's not clear, but for this. Yeah. And that's why as a real estate agent, when we list a property or even before we list, we should immediately review the title report and look for these problems. And if we don't know the questions, contact the title company. They either have staff and or attorneys that will interpret that, and it's so important. And so in Texas, do typically real estate agents, are they able to order title when they open an escrow under contract? Are they able to when they list the property? How do you encourage realtors? What's the best practice?
Yeah, so I try to explain to agents that you need to understand probate law first. Because the problem that they use, because a lot of agents will go and they'll put their preferred title company, and they don't understand that in the Texas, we have a really, really, it's a disaster right now because we just don't have enough escrow officers. It's a hard business. And so they're trying to get people in and trying to get people to do the job. But a lot of these agents are overworked, and they don't look at the file until a few days before closing.
Correct.
And so when they pull that file up and then they see, oh, there's a dead person in title, then they have to call everybody and go, well, we can't close in a few days. You guys are going to have to go through probate and figure this out and deal with this. So I've tried to explain to agents, you need to ask that question up front and not assume that the title company is going to catch that someone, has passed away on title. So if you have elderly individuals that are selling their homes, make sure that, you don't have to be too intrusive in people's lives, but get a little bit of the family history. Like, right. Okay, is this a second marriage that's going on? If it's only, an elderly woman, was she married? Did her husband pass away recently? Those are the things that will kind of clue you to, maybe I need to immediately look at this. But another good way is exactly what you explained is, okay, you get it with the title company, they send back, in Texas, it's Schedule C. You go through and you find out on there, is there anybody who's passed away on title? And we try to do education seminars for real estate agents on how to look that up and understand what these title reports are saying so they can get ahead of it.
And this is one of those areas that I think that as a real estate agent, if you want to present yourself as an expert, you need to take that training, right? If you're just a real estate agent, want to learn how to do more business, knowing there are such problems and to work with experts is fine. But if you want to present yourself to an attorney or to consumers as a real estate expert in probate, these are the kind of things you have to learn is how do you read the title report so that, I literally have transactions where the escrow officer hasn't even looked at the prelim. He didn't know why we changed title companies. I said, well, because 4 months ago, when I got the listing, I pulled the prelim and the first company wouldn't insure title and we went to another one and they would. And so that's why I didn't do it because I'm a mean guy. I did it because we want to close. And that's important to work with people who can finish the process.
Yeah, because that's what we, as a title company, we sell ourselves to attorneys. Attorneys are kind of my biggest business because we call ourselves an attorney-friendly title company. Most people understand that title companies are like the fourth arm of the law. You can have the law and then you have a title company that says, we're not going to insure that. We don't care. And so since I own the title company, I can look at it and I can go through the law and still insure something and say, hey, we're going to back this even though the underwriters will not. Because, I have this issue just yesterday it was a rights of survivorship deed that another attorney in town is trying to deal with. And I had to explain to him, well, in Texas, these cause problems. And so the underwriter's probably not going to insure this. You could try to go through title company you're using right now. See if they will. If they don't, just move it over, and then I will insure it, because I can go back and basically know that no one's going to file suit in this case, so we don't need to worry about the issue that's being presented.
And I think you bring up 2 points. One, which is that just because it's legal doesn't mean it's insurable. And I've had cases where attorneys say to me, well, the law doesn't require, for example, a notice of proposed action in California. When we sell property with full authority, we're supposed to notice certain parties. And attorney will say, well, we don't need it. I'll say, well, that's interesting to know the law, but the truth is the title company will not insure title without it. And so you can be right and not close, or we can get the and then the flip side is there's cases where title companies, the law is clear and they don't want to. And as I say to title companies all the time, it's title insurance. It's not title guarantee. It's title even though they might have name guarantee in the title, it's title insurance in that they're supposed to take reasonable, mitigated, proper, researched, understandable, quantifiable risks, because it was 100% guaranteed by law. If the court gives an order for it, you don't need title insurance theoretically. And title companies love, well, I just want the judge to order that. Well, then why do we have you? What are you insuring? If I need to go to a judge, that costs way more than title insurance. And so I think as a real estate agent, again, in California, we have to learn like where to push, where to shop, and where to find other title companies. And this is kind of, we've all met people who are good title reps because they come out of our office, they drop off pens or whatever, take us out to lunch. But at the end of the day, Taylor's given us some really good insight into the kind of details behind the scene. So you're a title company to attorneys, and I would think that attorneys would really appreciate, for example, I know the thing that I get a lot for attorneys is, how many properties does this guy own, or can you get me a copy of that deed? And I get that all the time, and I have an assistant who pulls it right away. And the attorney will say, well, you can just give me the resource. I say, no, I want you to call me. I want you to think of me when you have a problem. I don't want you to go to the title company. I'm glad to do it. I'm thrilled to do it. It makes my day I would do it all day long. To some level, I imagine you do the same thing, that you want to be the resource for realtors and or title companies as far as deeds and histories and things like that.
Yeah, so exactly. So when agents have problems, I have actually other attorneys in my office that I've hired solely because they assist with real estate matters for agents, even though it's kind of like not the practice I necessarily want to be in. And so we try to be that resource for agents to help them out in different situations. But on the flip side, we get the problem files all the time. That's kind of our niche. And so my escrow officers are really good at what they do, because they're constantly seeing the crazy situation that other title companies are like, we don't want this. And so they send it off to us.
Now, just notice he smiled when he said that. See, a real probate expert or professional loves bragging about how many problems they work with. A fake expert complains about a problem and wants easier business. But when you're legitimately in this business as an expert, I'm sure offline you and I could brag about, well, I had one file that had 8 problems. No, I had one that had 9 problems. I had one, right? We all go through different, we all can tell stories about the squatter with the guns and the rodents and the pests and the dogs and the cats and the eviction. And but I had all that. Plus I also had, like cars and trucks. And so just notice that. I think it's important to notice. So along the way, you work with real estate agents. Now I kind of came to you through a different route. I work with, I think Teresa is one of the attorneys in your office. I'm working with her on a case. That's kind of what brought me to you. So I'm a little different. But oftentimes I'm sure you have both real estate agents who want referrals from you, but then you also have realtors who bring you business. I imagine they're the ones you want to try to refer business to. What's the best practice for realtors to earn the relationship where they can start seeing referrals or seeing business from you rather than just cold calling you, hey, can you send me your deals? What's the best practices you've seen from, or have you not seen any, of real estate agents that you have chosen to work with?
So I'll put, for me, it's we have a core group of real estate agents that consistently send us business. And so when it comes to referring business, because we always are looking to refer to real estate agents, that's one of our goals, is like, okay, because I know there's these weird things that attorneys, especially probate attorneys, do. I think it's a violation of your fiduciary duty, but they'll make deals with investors, and they send
Yes. How's that not a violation?
In my opinion, it is, but they don't get in trouble for it. So it's because the executor, when he's selling the property, you're supposed to get the best deal for the property. Well, the only way you're going to know that is by listing the property. Right?
Correct.
And so sending out to a bunch of investors, well, they're not going to give you, they're going to give you the best behind the scenes deal maybe. But you want to get it listed. And then that way, if it ever comes back against the executor, he doesn't have to worry about it because I listed it. And so, I sold it to the best option that was available. So if you're a probate attorney and you're listening to this, I think you always need to tell your executor, hey, you need to go and list the property. Some of the agents that we use, because a lot of the clients that we have go, well, I got an offer from this investor, and so I'm like, well, okay, if you're the only beneficiary of the property, you can go ahead and sell it to, but you have other ones. But some of the agents that we have will work with them and go, hey, let me list it for 5 weeks. And then if I can't get anything better than what that investor's offering you, I'll back out of the deal. You don't need to pay me anything, and you can sell to the investor.
Yeah.
And so we've done that a few times to help out with that scenario of they just want the house sold. They don't want to deal with all the crap that's in the house and everything. And so there's understandable situations like that. And then
right.
But along those lines, yes, you need to be aware of the fact that as an attorney, you're a fiduciary, and the only way that you're going to protect yourself in the long run that the house didn't sell is that you got comps and you got listings out there. So
yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, and I think there's obviously exceptions. You have those edge case, weird properties, weird situations, outlying areas, those kinds of things. But in general, I live in Metro Los Angeles. There's no reason not to put it on the market and to get the best price almost all the time. I'm like everything else, there's exceptions. So what would you say are the best practices of the real estate agents that you work with? You say you have some that refer you business. Obviously, one best practice is they refer you the business versus other attorneys. And that probably is a big piece of it. I mean, to be honest, it's hard to find good attorneys who both, appreciate your business, do a good job. It's a lot easier said than done. FYI, I don't know what it's like in Texas, but in California, not so simple. Is that the best practice, or are there other one or two things that you see commonly amongst those best realtors that you work with?
So the core ones that we use, and there's some that we use more than others in that core group, and the ones that we use the most, I'm going to be flat out honest with you, are the people, the agents who are proactive in solving problems. The least thing I want to do is refer you a person, and then I'm doing everything for you. Like, right. There's issues because when you do get probate properties, there's going to be a lot of different things that you're going to have to understand. It isn't just a straightforward transaction. You're going to have to handle estate sales. You're going to have to be able to deal with people that are going through difficult times. Often you have multiple heirs, and so there's two agents that I really like because they will get on the phone and talk to those other. They're not scared to go up and call them and say, hey, this is what we need to get done. And they're just very good at resolving the issues without it blowing up in everyone's face. Because part of, big thing that I try to explain to people in a probate situation is the worst thing that can happen here is attorneys get involved. Because attorneys know in probate, they're going to get paid when there's a house. That house is going to get sold and their bills are going to get paid. And so if your brother or sister goes out and gets an attorney, it's only going to eat at the estate and what you're going to get. And so having someone that I can go to as an agent and be like, can you work with people and resolve issues and get everybody on board and talk to them? It's so important for me because I don't want a client to come to me, it all blows up in their face, and then they're end up paying $100,000 in attorney fees between me and two other attorneys over arguing about ladders or different stupid items that never should be argued about. So, right.
Yeah, I think it's a big opportunity for us as realtors in that attorneys are kind of restricted, let's say, from talking to the other parties directly. If they have representation, I believe you're obligated to go through the attorney, right? Yeah. As a realtor, I'm not. And so now it's different. You can't instruct me maybe to talk to the other party if they're represented. I don't know your particular ethics in Texas. I'm sure is a little different than California. But here in California, absent specific instruction, I can do whatever I want as far as attorney ethics. I don't have any restrictions. So for me, I can call the other party. I can call the other heir that's causing a problem and try to be reasonable and say, look, here's where you're headed. And I'm just a realtor trying to sell the house for you. And I also represent you. You're part of the estate. I'm not either party's realtor. And so I think that that's where a proactive agent can get involved properly. Now, I know it's touchy, and some attorneys are very controlling by their nature. I think the default is control. So where do you how do you kind of massage that difference between me doing what you want me to do as proactive and me kind of crossing the line? I'm sure you have a big practice. I'm sure you have some very clear lines that you want people to cross. How do you work with agents? Is that just over time they learn that, or is there some specific process or instruction that you give people?
Yeah. So when I talk to the agent, I make sure that they understand it's like your job is to sell that house, and it depends on the situation. Like if there's an executor, you work for the executor and what the executor tells you to do. But if we're doing some type of probate where we're transferring the property directly to the beneficiaries, then you need to get everybody to sign off, and they're all your clients. And so you can solve a problem that I can't if there is an attorney involved on the other side. And that is you go and you talk to everybody and get this house sold. Now that might not resolve all the legal issues, but I still have issues with, like, I have a house right now that's 3 years in, and we still haven't sold this house because every time I get a resolution with the attorneys on getting it done, we get a few days to close. And then one of the kids goes, I'm not going to sign, and blows it all up again. And so, we're actually it's more. It's probably heading close to 4.5 years now. And it's incredibly frustrating to deal with that problem. And there's no real estate agent involved, and they won't agree to one. And so we're stuck with this. I have to call the attorney. I resolve it, and then I call the other one, and then he goes, I don't agree with this. And it's just to the point now that nothing's getting done, and nobody really cares, because really when you add everything up, attorneys are going to be we have 4.5 years of bills. And so it's like, the attorneys are going to take most of the property when it's sold. And so everybody's kind of just sitting like, well, we don't care anymore.
Right.
And so you're just at an impasse now of the problem. And then the attorneys don't care because they know they're not making any more money.
Right.
And so it's frustrating. I talk to my client probably once a month and to tell them I'm trying to resolve it. We've been to mediation 2 times. We've been to the court 4 times with mediated settlement agreements, and it just never resolves itself.
In LA County, our cases, the first 2 digits are the last 2 digits of the year. So like a case now filed, we'll start with 25 and then some code. So you see I have cases where it's 19 STPB or 20 STP. So it's a constant reminder. This case has been around for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It is. I do think that is smart on the coding, because it just brings right to your mind how long this thing has been around and what a problem it must have been when you see the number.
Oh yeah, the worst one I ever had lasted 7 years. It was a nightmare case. It just never. Every time something would happen, there would be something crazy, blow it all up, and it was just one thing after another for 7 years.
Now, one thing I would imagine that you have in Texas are people who have estates with property in other states. They move to Texas from Colorado, California, New York, or wherever, and there's a probate, and then you have property in other states. You sub-probate those. How do you handle the legal aspects? Because I know in California, that property would have to be probated in California and coordinated into the state in Texas. How do you handle that?
Yeah, so people have to understand, if you own real estate in more than one state, you have to probate in every state that there's real estate in, because the property it's called the law of situs. The laws of where it's located govern. And so in Texas, if someone passed in California, but there was property, actually we had this situation a few years ago where a very wealthy lady in California passed away, and she owned her family had a lot of mineral rights here in Texas, and they did no planning whatsoever. And so we had to probate the estate, and we had to go around on each property and resolve the issues. And so, after 5 years of kind of going through everything and putting it all together. They finally got it all resolved. Unfortunately, it's like when you look back, it's like, well, all that could have easily been resolved within, less than a month if the decedent would have just planned it all out and figured it all out when she was alive.
Well, that's a great transition, the segue, thank you, to we've been talking about probate, which is really what happens if you don't have a good plan for the most part. The biggest misconception I find in California, at least, is people think, well, I have a will, therefore I have a plan. And the answer is, well, the will is kind of the game plan the court's going to use, but at the end of the day, you're still going to go to probate. A will does not void probate. A will is probated in California, at least. Again, exceptions in other states. So you're never going to get out probate with a will. You really need to have an estate plan that most commonly includes some sort of a trust or other entities. So let's talk a little bit about your practice. Do you handle estate planning, which I call avoiding probate? Do you help people avoid those plans? And what's kind of the common practice or common problem that causes people to come to you to prepare an estate plan?
Yeah, so a lot of people, so one of the issues is people just don't understand what probate is. And probate is, it's a word, it means to prove. And what we're doing is we're proving valid ownership of property. That's the whole process. And usually when people use probate, they're referring to the legal process of going through a court in order to transfer property. And in every state, there isn't just one probate. In Texas, we have 7 different types, but 4 main ones that we can look through. So it's hard when you start talking to people who says, oh, I want to avoid probate and everything. Well, it's like, well, probate's kind of a complicated area of law. And why do we want to avoid this? Well, the most important reason to avoid probate is the time and cost. It's just one thing I try to explain to people a lot of times is people are like, oh, well, my executor can deal with that. And it's like, well, if you have to do probating a will and appointing an executor, if you go through what we call an independent administration in Texas, it still takes 6 months to a year. And we're not that complicated of an state to do that. So that process, I try to explain to my clients is like, hey, you're asking your son or daughter to take about, usually 100 hours out of their life just to put everything together that you could do in less than 5 hours. And so it's kind of a responsibility to take upon yourself to make sure all that stuff's set up correctly. Now, you can't always avoid probate. There are people that have estates that are just too complicated. Actually, one of my biggest things right now that I'm experiencing are people are wanting to go through probate to get access to digital assets. Like a lot of people, I had one last year where their daughter passed, but she didn't really have very much assets, but they wanted her Facebook account. And you have to have an executor or an administrator appointed to get access to that because she had posted all of her pictures on there, all of her memories were there, and they didn't want to lose that. And so there's some reasons why people are going through probate now because we don't Facebook, you actually can go on and set up who would get your Facebook if you pass away. But other situations you can't. So there are sometimes we have to go through probate. We can't avoid the situation, but usually, absolutely, we want to figure out the easiest way to handle it. Because in Texas, it's easy to avoid probate now. We have the thing called transfer on death deeds. Transfer on death deed is a deed that you can file in the record, and if it's there, it automatically, upon your passing, transfers the home to whoever you've listed. And so before we had to create a trust to avoid probate, but now it's a very simple thing for people who have small estates. We can avoid probate without even having to create a trust.
So, as far as preparing the estate plan ahead of time, if they need it, a lot of these things are changing over time. Like you mentioned, accessing digital assets for Facebook more as a collectible or a memory item. But now businesses, I don't know about yours, but I know like my business, there's social media accounts that have revenue. Like I get paid money from YouTube theoretically, and it would continue in other assets. And so the law didn't really anticipate, or years ago didn't anticipate this. And we said, well, we'll just get you the passwords, you control it. But to go in and control somebody's asset that generates revenue, now that's a different level than just an administrator trying to access photos or protection. And so these are things where it requires a estate plan to be reviewed and say, well, tell me a little bit more about your business. What are you doing with it? Or maybe now we have a new catch-all. Maybe the new template you use includes all the IP that goes along with a company. So let's talk about, as an estate plan, somebody coming to you and says, well, I have maybe substantial assets. I have, multiple properties. I have a business, and we have a property with the business, and we have a second home, and we have, IP with my business, and we have, various assets. What's that process look like? Meaning, do people just come to you because they know they need to do it and they've never done it? Or is it something that triggers them? Is it only when they think they're going to die? Is it only when they are going to travel around the world? Why can't we get people into your office to make the plans ahead of time? Okay, I'm going to calm down here. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it begins with some kind of trigger event that people usually have, whether it's traveling. That's a big one for people because they think of, I have little children, or a parent passes away. But let's use one that I'm getting a lot more of are individuals like yourself, Bill, that who do have revenue from sources like YouTube or different things, that because they built up a huge audience and they're starting to realize this is all tied to my accounts. If I don't deal with this, then I'm going to have big issues. And so in those situations, there really isn't a great way. It's very difficult even though an executor would have authority to go and access your accounts, it's still very hard to get it. Apple really doesn't want to give people access to things, even when they have authority under the law. So transferring certain assets into trusts are becoming more important in the digital world. The other big area is in crypto and cryptocurrencies. I can't tell you. Actually, I have an attorney in my office. Her husband passed, and they have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin that are tied up in his wallet, but he never left the password. So she has no ability to get access to all that money. And I have one client. It was kind of I kind of heard about Bitcoin before, but it was really my experience with Bitcoin was back in 2016 because their son had invested a ton into it. And still to this day, they can't get access to that, to his wallet. And so it's a digital asset that's now probably worth multi-millions of dollars. And it's stuck up because there's no system to handle it, where now there are ways to be able to plan for that and put it together and to kind of have it. But the other big thing, it's going to happen in real estate here soon, because the move is in the crypto world is to try to what they call tokenize real world assets.
Right.
And so a big push is kind of this idea this would harm my business, but that you could kind of get rid of title companies by tokenizing real property. And title companies no longer have to insure transactions because you're selling more of a share or a token of your home when you sell your home instead of selling the home. And verifying things through, you still have to use title to make sure people haven't passed away or different things like that. So those issues are going to become more and more problems as things become kind of more complicated in the world of how we handle it. Currently, our legal system is so slow at answering the problems and trying to solve them. So people have to really be aware of, hey, you own assets or your parents own assets, or you need to make sure that this is all done, because if you don't, you can lose a lot of money now because things are tied up in certain things that we just don't have access to when you pass.
I think the long-term protection for business people like you and me is to always be looking at the edge cases, because there's always going to be those edge cases or new things or new problems that pop up. And if you just work on the general stuff, which is easy, and we all love to get that, and I want more of the easy probates. I love the $2 million probate. Everybody's on board. Everybody's happy. I just don't get enough of those. And so I work with the other ones. But I think that as a professional, we have to be working those edge cases to keep the business going, to also put us in position for the other business. And I think that, like all businesses, I remember when I was a kid, There was a great book on the best American companies, and one of the case studies was on McDonald's. And the claim was the reason why McDonald's was so good is they only did certain things. They only did hamburgers, cheeseburgers, fries, Cokes, shakes, and whatever, pies or something. And they only did those 8 or 10 items, and they did them their way over and over again and made billions. And the problem was, over time, McDonald's was forced to broaden their menu because the market's changed. It's a competitive marketplace, and they have whatever, and they're successful. And I think attorneys, I look at what you do compared to attorneys who work in the space. Like my father was an attorney. He had a partner who did the wills and probate. And, so much of his business was more the cookie cutter over and over again because these cases weren't developed. And now we have more complicated cases, and that's where the experts get the business and go underneath. So I think all of us as realtors and attorneys need to look for how to get those edge cases. Now, let me go back, and I want to re-ask a question I asked before, which is what percentage of the time does somebody come to you for an estate plan because of a triggering event, and what percentage is it they just go, hey, I need to have an estate plan. It's proper preparation for my family. It's proper responsible living, and I need to get that done. What percent of the time of people just do it because you're supposed to do it, kind of like not drinking Coke or not drinking sugar drinks, and just give it up because you're supposed to, versus people who have to?
So I would say about 60% of the time is a triggering event that someone's coming in, and I can probably be safe saying that because my business around the year spikes at certain points, like before the holidays, like the 3 weeks before in November. All of a sudden, I get all these calls to do estate planning. May is a big month for me because everybody's going to go on vacation that summer, and people are doing different things. And then, of course, after when people come in because their parents have passed, now they're like, okay, now I got to do my estate planning because now I've seen my parents didn't do it, so I see how bad it can be. And so I'd say about 60% of the time, then the other 40% of the time, it's you're just getting people that are just like, okay, well, it's now time to do this. And
I have a case where the client wasn't triggered. He had a $40 million estate. He met with the attorney. He wrote the check. They had multiple meetings. The attorney prepared a great draft program, put it in a notebook. The customer took it home, passed away, never executed it, never funded it. And so I think one of my purposes of this podcast is to get realtors to say, we had a chance to be the catalyst. You heard Taylor say, only 40% are doing because they're supposed to. We know when they're supposed to because we know the title, how they took title of the house. When there are sellers, we know how they took title. When they're buyers, we know how they're shopping, how they plan to take title. We should be having those conversations with them, and when appropriate, refer them to an appropriate resource. So Taylor, if I had a customer who I knew owned a house, didn't have an estate plan even started, or a buyer who's looking to buy a house, young family, couple, needs to get started, needs to get a plan, what's the next step in them starting down the estate planning process? Do they consult somebody in your office? Is a webinar? What's their next step to move forward?
Yeah, so the next step is usually I just tell people come in and meet with me, and then let's figure out if is this going to be, can we get this done quick and just get it finished, tidy it up, and then you're done. Because there's a lot of people that are that way. They just have a couple kids, they have a few things, and they really just don't need to be wasting a bunch of time on things. There's other people that have to do a lot more work. But one area, especially if you have a lot of real estate agents that listen to this podcast or different people that are in the business, I do elder law too. And one of the things I say, well, your estate planning is incredibly important for your heirs. What's probably more important for you is making sure your parents' estate planning is done.
Yes.
And so people don't want to be pushy with their parents or anything like this, but if you have aging parents, sitting them down and going, what have you done? Like, what have you put together? And maybe they don't want to share it with you. So you have to kind of work with them slowly or whatever. But, if you had to buy a Christmas gift for your parents and they just refuse to go to an estate planning attorney because they don't want to pay for it for them.
Yes.
You will save all that money.
Yes.
From avoiding the problem of going through everything. So,
yeah.
But as for real estate agent, there is a huge area that is underserved and that is in the elder law area, and that is when people are experiencing long-term care issues. So we have this really big problem in America going on right now. There's a huge divide between the haves and have-nots. The have-nots are really struggling financially. Just since 2020, seniors have seen a 20% decrease in their purchasing power from their Social Security. About 2 days every week, I'm meeting with somebody where I have to just tell them, you have to move in with your children. You can't afford to live on your own anymore. Like right. The numbers don't make sense. However, there's a great opportunity right now throughout America, and that is there are a lot of kids who are struggling and their parents are struggling. So I explained to them, hey, you guys can get a home together and do multi-generational living. Mom and dad, you can put the home in mom and dad's name. And in Texas, there's a bunch of tax benefits by doing it that way. Mm-hmm. Because our state's taxed through property tax. That's how we get most. So we have big property tax. So it's a big opportunity to help people lower their costs by combining resources. And right. And I said, people don't like to hear that sometimes, but I'm like, at the end of the day, that's how most of the world lives. This idea everybody has their own home, has their own life, that's a luxury that we had in the past for most people, but it's becoming less of a reality for most Americans today. And so right. helping real estate agents that understand how to do multi-generational family living and bring families together and say, okay, here are good places where you can still have your own space and a good home and kind of figure all that out. That's a big area that's kind of opening up to agents. And for someone who does elder law, it helps me a ton because I can go, hey, I need you to go talk to so-and-so. She knows the area or he knows the area right. and he can find you a good home that you guys can bring everything together and kind of figure everything out.
So I have another podcast, Reverse Mortgages, because it plays in where you have the parents who have, let's say, no income, but they have equity in a house. The younger kids who have enough income, but they're barely making it. And if they can move into a bigger house, get a reverse mortgage for part of it to finance that, and then now the kids have grandparents around to watch to help with the kids to reduce the daycare expenses. And so that multi-generational living, it worked, up until 100 years ago. That was how the world worked, and still over half the world, that's how it works, how they make things work. And so I'm not saying you have to, I'm not judging people who don't, but it creates opportunities. I think when you have opportunities, you can find a better solution. So look, I know, Taylor, you obviously are an incredible wealth of information. And for those listening, in McKinney, Texas, not only is Taylor the mayor of Probate Attorneys and on our podcast, but he's running for mayor in McKinney, Texas. So just before we wrap up here, give us a quick pitch. When's the election and what is it that you're going to do to help McKinney, Texas?
All right. So it's May 3rd and my campaign is Change is Coming. And we need to plan for it. And so the whole reason I jumped into getting involved was all the different issues that we are facing today. And the next 4 years are going to be very bumpy and understanding what's going to happen. So I'm trying to get my city on board, understanding we're going to have to make some big changes in order to make it through the next 4 years. And so...
Well, I'm not sure if you're watching this live or replay, or if you're obviously watching a couple months later, you missed out the chance to vote for him for mayor, but you have the chance to talk to him. If you're a professional attorney or a realtor in the probate space, you have a chance to reach out to him and his firm. willprobateattorneys.com is the website. Phone number 214-250-4407. Taylor Willingham. Like I said, I haven't worked with him because I've worked with his firm, and Teresa's doing a great job on a case that we're working on in, I think it is McKinney? No, it's Port Arthur, but in Texas. And you guys service all of Texas, and we talked about that before as well. So, Taylor, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it and look forward to continuing the conversation. And hopefully next time we'll talk to you, it'll have to be your honor, the mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Thanks so much. And for the rest of you, thank you for joining us. This is Probate Weekly. We do this every week of a new episode, usually with a real estate professional, whether you're a realtor, attorney, a vendor that can help us be more successful. You can go to our Facebook group, continue the conversation, look for referrals, ask for help there. It's the Facebook group is probateweekly.com, and you can also register at probateweekly.com, get reminders, as well as if you scroll down, you'll see past episodes on YouTube, and also you can see us in the various audio formats. I'm Bill Gross at Bill Gross Probate. Thank you so much for your support. As always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Bill.
Taylor, thank you so much. Obviously you're a wealth of information, and I'd have you on every couple of months if you wanted to. We could talk just elder care. I see your website. We could talk just estate planning. I have a separate estate planning web podcast as well. So maybe I'll reach out to you after May and see if I can get you back on again on one of the other formats. And if I can ever help promote something for you, please reach out to me.
Yeah, I'd love to, and I'll definitely. I don't have anybody out in the LA area to send anything to, so if we have anything comes across that we need you to. Yeah, we had one up in San Francisco probably 6 months ago where they were trying to sell a home and they asked for a referral and we had nobody to give to them.
So like you, I service the state, I'm licensed in the state. I have team members. I have 2 listings now in Richmond, which is outside of Oakland. So some I'll do on my own, some I'll bring another agent in. So it depends. And also if you need help for an attorney to handle like the sub-probate as well, Scrivener's a great resource for, I say, the basic cases. If it's more complicated, I can help you with those as well. So if I can help anyway, please reach out anytime.
Oh yeah, I definitely will give you a call reach out to you if I need at least. Also, if I need just a referral to an attorney out there.
If I can help at all. Thanks so much, and good luck with the election. We'll follow back up with you after May 3rd.
All right, thank you.
Should I come in? Should I vote illegally? Should I print a fake ballot or whatever? No, just kidding. For the record, that's wrong. Okay.
If anyone's listening in, we didn't say that.
Best of luck.
All right, see ya.
Bye.